All right, welcome to another episode of the Cassels Cast. My name's Eamon Cassels. Joining me today is going to be my guy Kris Pursiainen. We did a full deep dive into the Eastern Conference playoff picture and shared our thoughts on who are the biggest threats to come out of the conference. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, joining the show now for a deep dive into the Eastern Conference playoff picture is Kris Pursiainen. How you doing today, man?
Hey, what's going on? Great to be here. I appreciate you having me on and us being colleagues over at Fansided. I think it was a match made in heaven there in our NBA nerd chat. Finding out that we like to go back and forth and talk hoops. So awesome to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you hopping on the show, and it should be a ton of fun. And for those of you that might not be familiar with Kris's work, he covers the Knicks over at Fansided as well as Clutch Point. So it will be interesting to get a Knicks perspective on this Eastern Conference playoff race. As you all know, I'm a Celtics fan, so it should be a nice balance. But yeah, I think first things first, we got to start off with the Pistons because they are still atop the conference. And then obviously, Cade Cunningham went down with that collapsed lung injury last week, and he is targeting a return to the playoffs. But yeah, in general, where were you at with this team before the Cade injury, and how does this injury sort of affect how you view this team's upside in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think I'll start by saying it doesn't. And maybe that's an insult. Maybe it's you could take it however you want. But I'm just as in on the Pistons now as I was before, which is not all that much. I think the most important thing that genuinely should be discussed first every time the Pistons come up. So staying true to that thought here, bringing this up first, the way they play, the style they play, the energy that takes, the fact that they have sustained it, the fact that they have, there's a saying that I don't know about like a habit and a trend and whatever. Like they've done it. That's who they are now. And that grit gang, that they chef's kiss, ground and pound, Eastern Conference basketball. This is effing beautiful, people. This is what people talk about when they're like, I used to get home from work and crack a beer and I'd turn on my TV and the New York Knicks would be on there and it would be five of them with orange and blue metal bats just beating down the Detroit Pistons in the lane. Like that basketball that people miss so much, it's on their TV every night. They would just rather complain than watch it. So they ignore the Pistons. They ignore teams like the Magic, the Pistons, the Thunder that bring that physicality, that edge to the table. I want to say first, Detroit is admirable and commendable, and they deserve legit praise from coaching to locker room leaders to locker room followers, everyone, top to bottom. They deserve credit as people for how they've approached the grind of an 82 game season, how they have made it their mission to kind of get in these little vendettas, get in these little, like the whiteboard material is endless. They'll make it up if they need to. They don't care. They are going to have an edge. I love all of that. I think we need more of it. I think it is the remedy to tanking is people seeing teams like this and just being like, yeah, I prefer this. I prefer toughing through it and all of that can be true. And I think it's now I have to come through with the fine thin needle and pop the bubble. I don't think that I trust them. I might, but I don't trust them in crunch time to score. And I think it's that simple. I don't trust them in crunch time to score. The NBA right now is so heavily predicated on winning closeouts and creating quality shots. Whether they go in or not, up to Dr. Naismith up there, right? Like that's just the ball will bounce. Sometimes you get Kawhi, sometimes you get the opposite. I think for a Pistons team that is so heavily predicated around Cade, they did the right thing. They didn't go and get like the Cam Thomases, the I'm thinking back to Dion Waiters on the Heat. I think right now to Karis LeVert and Hawks Pistons, like the kind of player he's been, they could have filled out their roster with those kind of guys. Done the 2010s, the 2000s, all five guys on the court can score in ISO, and that's why we're dangerous. Like, you have to keep us honest. You have to guard us. They went more the Cade and Friends route, which I really like. I think sticking guys in the corner that can hit those shots, Herter, Robinson, right? Like, they've got talent. Harris is good. Duren is great. But when it comes to checking the boxes, I don't think they have enough. And it's not anyone's fault. That's no one's like downfall or undoing. I just think this season they check some boxes really strong and emphatically, but the box of secondary creation, the box of ancillary playmaking, the box of like, I don't want to say rim protection because Stewart is elite at that, but then I think he's so good that it almost makes Duren maybe look a little worse in comparison. It's like, I just think enough boxes are checked for this team to be legitimately good, for this team to be good enough to upset your favorite contender on a Tuesday, and for this team to be good enough to upset your favorite contender on national TV on a Saturday. They did it to the Knicks several times. They swept them in the regular season. But playoff basketball is different. It's a different equation. The Pistons have a lot of answers. I don't think they have the answer key to the test of the NBA playoffs just yet. And we know that doesn't even guarantee you anything. It just guarantees you a dance, a shot. I don't think they have that. So I'm gonna full fade here, say, despite loving them, their players, their ethos, that they from the couch here, for the nerd on the couch saying this, take it for what you will. I don't think they have what it takes to come out of this Eastern Conference because it's a really strong conference, not because I think there's some crapper team or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you summed it up nicely there. And yeah, I totally agree. It's important to acknowledge how great of a story this is, how fun they are to watch, and like you said, if you're an old head and you like this style of basketball, definitely make sure to tune into some Pistons games because this style totally exists around the league. And Cade has been awesome, and that injury is just devastating. So yeah, thoughts with him as well. Yeah, at the same time, I think I've gone back and forth with them. When Cade was healthy, that is. Points of the year, I just thought their defense was so dominant, where it was like, hey, maybe they can sort of make up for the offense. And then at the trade deadline, I kind of thought they were going to make some sort of big move, maybe like trading for Michael Porter Jr. or something like that. I think they might be regretting that a little bit. But yeah, at the same time, I totally agree. The lack of secondary creation next to Cade will be really harmful in a playoff setting. I mean, it's kind of like Tobias Harris and Asar Thompson right now are your two real secondary creators. Obviously, Duren's an all-star, but he doesn't really create for himself. He's more of that elite rim runner type of guy, which is
Yeah,
still super
play
valuable.
finisher.
Yeah, exactly. Play
You need
finisher.
good. Carl Towns is a play finisher, not a play creator, right? It's not some admonishment. Anthony Davis, play finisher, not a play creator. It's fine, but it's all about the puzzle pieces. And I think the Pistons have some corners. I think they have a lot in the middle, but I think they're missing a corner piece. And that is more harmful than even a team, and we'll get into them, like Boston, I think has a huge glaring box unchecked with regard to front court depth and front court in general. But the other boxes are all so emphatically checked that they might just squeak by. They might just be all right. Like, I don't know if Detroit has that leeway, inexperience, youth coupled together with the things we were talking about on the court. Again, I don't think it's like anyone's undoing or like the firing of their front office that they, but like you said, great point that they might be looking back at that deadline with a little regret looking at the rest of the East right now. Tatum, some hype, no front court. Cavs, some hype, playoff Harden, and how much have they been able to kind of rehearse? Knicks are the most up and down team in the NBA. Should we have gone for it? I wouldn't be surprised if someone is secretly having that thought, doesn't want to share it, but is thinking it loud in that front office.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, in general, I think this Pistons team is in a really good spot overall. And I mean, hey man, like 2 years ago, they won 14 games. They were literally the worst team in the league. They were one of the worst teams of all time. They had the longest losing streak of all time. So for them to be in this spot, 2 years later is simply remarkable. And it's a testament to their front office. It's a testament to the coaching job that JB Bickerstaff's done, to
Yep.
Cade's improvements, Duran's improvements. You can go down the line. But at the same time, I just can't get there with them as a top tier contender. And I could even see them, depending on the right matchup, or the wrong matchup in their case, being knocked out in the first round. And the other thing, in addition to the lack of creation that I'm concerned about, is the 3-point shooting. Well, you do have Kevin Herter. He's been extremely up and down this season. And then Duncan Robinson's he's the only real stable 3-point shooter
Yeah.
around Cade, and I think that's going to be a big concern for me in the playoffs. They're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. Asar Thompson and Ron Holland are just total non-threats from long distance, and you need them defensively. They're so important to their defensive success, but having two non-shooters in a playoff setting is a really tough recipe. So yeah, I can't get there with this team, but overall they're still in a good spot. We're going to talk about some of the teams towards like the play-in picture, but is there any team that you think specifically would pose a bad matchup for them in the first round that you could maybe even see pulling off a first round upset? Or are you more so saying, hey, they're probably going to win a first round series, but likely playing the Cavs in the second round, they'll be sent home?
I have a team in the East that I think can ruin a lot of people's years. 85 points. That's a number. I'll explain it. Last night, we're recording Thursday. Last night was Wednesday. Joel Embiid, VJ Edgecombe, and was it Tyrese Maxey? They combined for 85 points against the Bulls. I believe Embiid was back, baby. I mean, he looked immense. And what he's done all season is just kind of abandon the defense, and I love it. He said, "You know what? Instead of being a shell of myself on both ends of the court, why don't I make like an NBA star and put all my energy on the offensive end of the court?" And now he is a top 20 player in the NBA, because he is so good on offense. Like 35, 6, and 7 dimes last night on 12 of 7. Don't do it. Don't laugh. 12 of 17 shooting. I he's immense, and I think the Sixers pose a real threat for anyone in the first round that they've run into that can't keep up. Like they won 157 to 137 last night. That's it wasn't Maxey, it was Paul George, by the way.
Even crazier.
That's what I was forgetting to circle back on, was that it was Paul George dropping 28, 6, and 4, and also 4 steals, because he's still doing that. VJ Edgecombe 22, 6, and 6. The Sixers have guys. They have multiple scorers. They have multiple ball handlers. They have multiple. I'm in on the versatility of this group. I'm in on their upset ability. If they get the Pistons in the first round, I'd be worried if I were Detroit, because Philadelphia they're big, and they might just have the personnel to battering ram Duran and Stewart for a series until you wear them down. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I don't think the Raptors could do it. I don't think the Heat could do it. The Hornets, I feel like that's like unstoppable force, immovable object, like the Pistons defense, the Hornets offense in a playoff series. I'd be fascinated, just fascinated to see how that one went. But I don't see the Hornets beating Cade. Like Cade is been that guy. I saw him put 42, 8, and 13 on the Knicks at the Garden. I'm definitely biased because that's one of the best individual performances I've ever seen in person in my life in any sport ever. I'm young, but like, geez. And so, I just think Cade would get them out of that equation. The Sixers, though, Sixers should scare you if you're anyone in the East that is not the Knicks or Celtics. I think even the Cavaliers might like be a strange personnel scheme matchup for Philadelphia. I like Cleveland to take that series, and I like them to do it in 5 or 6 games if it happens, but I don't think those games are blowouts. Like, I think Philly claws. I like the Sixers team. I like their talent.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting point. Philly, I feel like they have one of the widest deltas of outcomes in terms of just seeding and playoff upside. I could maybe even see this being the year where they finally break through and they make a conference finals run. On the flip side, I just can't trust the health of Paul George and Joel Embiid, and that makes it really difficult for me to pick them in a playoff series. But when they're firing on all cylinders, I do think they have a lot of upside, and I do think they could give the Pistons a lot of headaches. For me, I think it's the Hornets, honestly, just because of that offensive firepower. I don't know if they have an answer to stopping Cade. Defensively, they have been really good since the turn of the calendar, but they don't have like a go-to on-ball stopper really. So that's a little bit of a concern, but I just don't think ultimately the Pistons can keep up with the Hornets' firepower. It would be a fascinating matchup, like you said, just given the Hornets' explosive offense and then the Pistons' elite defense. I think it would be a ton of fun. And given what we saw earlier in the year, there's probably going to be a couple fights if these two teams play in the playoffs. But yeah, ultimately, I do think the Hornets are better positioned than anyone else in the East to pull off an upset against the Pistons. But I would have the Sixers right there with them. So yeah, I think the Hornets might have some sneaky upside, but that's another team. Like we still have to see how these final 10 or so games play out for them, and they still have to prove it and make the playoffs because that's not guaranteed right now.
Yeah, I think Toby Harris and Miles Bridges are in like a similar situation right now where it's like their team could genuinely like make a next round of the playoffs if they could shoot, but they do it with volatility and infrequency that is not good. So like I think Toby Harris is doing like 35% on like four attempts a game, which is like Julius Randle, Nuggets, Jeremy Grant, like those guys that would make 35% of 3.8 threes a game. That's what you're getting. Uh, I don't mean to single him out because he's like Harris is a locker room leader in that on that Detroit team. All that talk I did earlier about crediting the mentalities in that locker room, a lot of that credit probably belongs to him setting up, curating a locker room as a veteran where guys feel like they can challenge each other and grow and learn and win and compete. But I also think, especially given his contract, it's a tough situation to look at and not say, not like a dynasty starts after you kind of thing, but like that meme is so prevalent now. It's where my mind goes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great point. They do have some flexibility there. I think we can move ahead to the Celtics though, because they're
Thank you.
currently just slightly above the Knicks. Maybe that will change after today's games, but yeah, right now they're the number two seed in the East. Obviously, they're my team. But yeah, what have you made of Tatum's return so far, and overall, just how much has this Celtics team exceeded your expectations?
I have been impressed by Tatum in the sense that when you apply the filter and the lens of this is a guy who's going to be a little unsure with his body, who's trying to fit in, be one of the guys. I know a lot of that discourse kind of lost its north star as his return was kind of getting closer, and people with very well intentioned comments were called losers because of it. Sorry, Mello, you didn't deserve that. But I do think that Tatum has taken that advice. He's whatever his trainer says, regardless of what his trainer says. I think he's listening to Carmelo Anthony. I think he's listening to these veterans in the media that said, "Hey, watch out. We all know this is your team, but you're dealing with humans. Remember, you're dealing with humans. Humans can be silly sometimes." And I think JT has done a really great job with that. And that I'm, the reason I'm confident in saying that is the way that JB has talked about it. So the way that Jalen Brown, after that Thunder game, talked about the opportunity just to be out there with Jason competing against a top flight team. Like this has all the makings of an intelligent, prepared group ahead of the postseason. I'm inclined to be more in on the Celtics than I'm comfortable with because of this DNA, this championship DNA. This I don't like their front court. Even once Vooch returns, I covered him in person at the Garden when he was a Bull this season. And my biggest takeaway was he can't move. I loved that guy's game for a decade in Orlando. Like, this is nothing against him. I think he's getting to that point athletically. You're seeing it with Kevin Durant right now, where he's not as physically imposing on his drives anymore. So he's doing more pull ups and pullbacks and fades and things to try and buy that little bit of space that he used to create with the freaking shoulder. Like, I think for Vooch, there's a little bit now of that. I've got the old man strength. I'm tough and I'm intelligent and I know where I need to be on the court. But watching him try to get there is more common than watching him get there. And so I don't trust the front court to hold up their defensive end of the bargain. I think offensively, Neem has been like a stud. He's making the right decisions with the ball in his hands or without. And JT and JB are like having a ball setting him up under the rim because he's a smart, eager young player who just wants to help and wants to be there for these guys. It's all championship DNA. It's all good stuff. I think sometimes the defense, not Kada, but like Vooch, or if Kada gets hurt, or if Vooch gets hurt, like who are you like who's the five? Where's Torrey Craig? You know, like gets me kind of wondering, like who the hell? You know, where's Grant Williams? Can we get someone to play the five? I just think Boston deserves some trepidation because of the front court, but other than that, I think the way they're talked about is fine. Like, I think they should be talked about as a team that has a chance to make the NBA Finals again. And who knows what happens once they're there. We just saw them beat OKC, so it might not happen over a 7-game series. But the answer to your question is I am more impressed by Boston than I thought I would be. I wrote them off initially thinking Tatum wouldn't come back, and I just didn't believe in a team led by Jaylen Brown. Like, I don't think that's anything against him. I think it would be the same thing if Jalen Brunson got hurt and Karl Anthony Towns was thrust into the lead role on the net. Like, it's just, that's not what you're here for. This is a situation that's been thrust on you, and you might not be ready for that. And that might not be your fault. And that might not be anyone's fault. Now with Tatum back and things going this swimmingly, it's really hard to kind of to not just kind of be like, yeah, New York and Boston are kind of on this crash course for the conference finals. I think that's where I'm at. I'd have to look at the bracket because I think New York would beat Cleveland, but I think Cleveland could beat Boston. But I think New York would beat Boston because Towns and Robinson versus the Boston front court, I think we saw that kind of break Missoula last year. And I think now with this Celtics front court, it would be worse for Boston. But like, I think the Celtics could knock out any of these other teams. So it's interesting to see, how the bracket exactly is going to play out. I know the Knicks and Celtics are dancing right now with the second and third seeds, but I think Boston's got as good of a chance as New York. I don't believe that. I think New York has a slightly better chance because if Mitchell Robinson's healthy, they check a lot more boxes and they have the ceiling that the Celtics have with that offensive versatility, 5 out, rim, dunker spot, wing in the dunker spot, big in the dunker spot, guard in the like they do it all. I would say Knicks, Cavs, Celtics, the rest. Like I have the Knicks as the best team in the conference, not because I look at them and I'm like, wow, they're gonna win the chip, but because I think right now in the war of attrition that is the Eastern Conference, the Knicks are the best suited based on the different opponents, the different schemes, the different yada, yada, yada. I give them the best chance to come out of the East, but that doesn't mean they're at 70% and the next team is at 10. Like this is a crazy conference right now. I just tweeted yesterday, like, I'd rather play any of the lower seeds in the Western Conference playoffs than the Eastern Conference playoffs in the first round. Like, you'd rather see Philadelphia right now than Houston? I don't know. I think the East is the better conference, even though the bigger stars are out West. And the testament to that is New York being so good, Boston being so good, but flawed, but still so good otherwise. New York having ups and downs being the kind of their flaw. Cleveland, we don't really exactly know what to expect or what exactly we're going to get, but we just kind of all agree that it probably won't be enough. They might shock us all, right? Donovan Mitchell might just be like, yeah, wait, hold on. I'm going to do the bubble thing again. And then James Harden fits seamlessly right off of that as Nets Harden and just they could run the table. They could just push through to the final. So I think there's a lot of parity right now, which is bad for predictions. But I think for the Knicks and Celtics and Cavs, I'm having a hard time not picking the Knicks as the standout team, given the advanced metrics and what they say about the team on both ends of the court. But also, those advanced metrics don't account for Boston getting Tatum back 3 weeks ago. So might all be for nothing when we get to the tip off in the playoffs. But I think it's like right now the Celtics are impressing me more than I was expecting. To answer your initial question and to kind of address the tangent I went off on, I would say it's like Knicks and then the Cavs and Celtics are just tied based on the bracket. Like I really got to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, for sure. I think I generally agree. I think I would have the Celtics slightly as my favorite, but I also kind of debate that every day. I think for me, it's between Celtics and Knicks. I think those two teams are kind of on that collision course to meet in the second round, and I think that's honestly going to be the real Eastern Conference Finals. With all due respect to the Cavs, we'll talk about them later. I would definitely give them a chance still, but I do think one of those two teams will represent the East this year. And yeah, I mean, even as a Celtics fan, this team has totally blown me away. I mean, I'm a big Jaylen Brown fan. I thought he was going to have a great season, but I thought a great season for him was going to be leading the Celtics to a 7 seed or maybe even a top 6 seed. I never imagined a top 3 seed.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't think that's a crazy take. I feel like that's pretty in line with what most Celtics fans were thinking, and some people were even saying, "Hey, let's go tank for AJ." But yeah, they
Yeah,
really did.
that was a thing. That was a that was an actual thing. Joe is probably the coach of the year.
He's
I would not be mad at all if they gave it to him.
He's got to be, yeah. I mean, it's crazy how they really picked up without skipping a beat while missing Tatum. And then Tatum's return, I've been generally impressed. I'm not going to say he hasn't skipped a beat because he's coming off this serious Achilles injury, and I don't think that's fair to expect that he was going to walk in and average 27 points a game again. But just in general, he's been purely additive to this team. I think just having that extra initiator, that extra creator, his versatility on defense is still super underrated to me. And I mean, his ability to process the game is incredible. If you look at some of his potential assists, it's just off the charts, and he creates so much just with his gravity and then his ability to read the floor. So he's been massive for this team. And I mean, just given that they were, maybe this is like a little too simplistic of a view, but given that they were a top 3 seed without him, and then he's looked really solid upon his return, I do sort of lean to the Celtics. Regarding the front court, I do
It's
think
tough.
I do think it's fair to have concerns. Kate has been absolutely tremendous. He's exceeded all my expectations. And when he's on the court, the Celtics have a truly elite defense, and overall, they still do have a really good defense, mostly because of Keita's rim protection, I would say. But if you look at like opposing points in the paint, opponents' field goal percentage at the rim, all these metrics, they indicate that the Celtics actually have a really good front court. I do think partially that could be fool's gold, especially because if Keita leaves the floor, I do not trust Vooch to provide any sort of that rim protection, and he's been out for a few weeks. And then Luka Garza, I don't know if he can hold up in a playoff series. So I do think it is fair to have concerns about their front court depth, but I am not to the point where I'm panicking at all because of some of those metrics and because, quite frankly, they've held up solidly for 70 plus games now. It's hard for me to think that's like a flaw to totally discount them. And then, like you said, just the championship DNA I think is huge. The Missoula factor I think is another thing that gives them kind of an underrated advantage. I think at this point he's pretty clearly a top 3 coach in the league, maybe even the best coach in the league. And I do think in a playoff series that could be an underrated advantage. I think looking at a potential matchup with the Knicks, which we can talk about from the Knicks side in a second, but man, I'm still a little bit surprised that the Knicks were able to get the best of the Celtics, and they played incredible, and that's all the credit to them. But I just think this Celtics offense in some ways can expose some of the Knicks' defensive flaws with Brunson and Towns.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's interesting because Tim Bontemps recently gave the same take on the Hoop Collective, saying like, "Yeah, the Knicks beat the Celtics, but I don't think it would go that way again. Like if they played that series again, I think the Celtics would win. And if they played this year with their updated teams, I think the Celtics would win." Like a little bit of me wonders if you guys don't see like the irony and like the other way around, or I guess the way to put it would be like if the Celtics beat the Knicks and everyone was like, "Yeah, but it's the Celtics. Like they're not gonna do that again. Like they're not gonna beat the Knicks again." And the rationale is mainly that something that happened doesn't count. It's one of those things like I'm not saying you because you were open, like you get, I think you get what I'm trying to say, which is like the notion of like, well, yeah, they won the series, but we never really. Meanwhile, some guys win one series against a bad team and get the rep of like owning a city. Like Trey Young from 2021 to 2024 was like NBA wide viewed as like the villain in New York City. And it was because he beat a team whose third best player was Taj Gibson in 2021. Like, my jaw is on the, like, how do people care? How does anyone care? And so I wonder if, like, the logic couldn't be kind of applied similarly, where it's like, the Knicks, every time they beat Trey in the regular season, every time they beat Trey, every time they beat the Hawks, the Wizards, whatever it is, everyone is like, oh yeah, but he beat them that one time. It's like, yeah, but things are different now. Like, I wonder if it's not the reverse now. Like, oh, well, the Knicks won that one time, but they're not going to win again. It's like, well, actually, maybe that one time showed us more than we thought. Like, maybe there's more to learn. I think Missoula's struggles with Robinson don't happen again if that series, if they play again this year, or if you repeat that series. But like, I thought that was a pretty solid example from within that series of something that like genuinely just like kind of broke Joe Missoula's brain. Like, his philosophy was at an end, and he just kept kind of like choosing wrong off of instinct. And that's, why you hire a coach, is because they have their thoughts and they have their habits and they have their things. But sometimes it's like, hey, look at what is happening. This is not working. Stop thinking that because you told yourself this would work, that it's going to start working at some point. Like, oh, they're due to win. They can't keep losing. Oh, he's due to get a hit. He can't keep striking out. Like, you never know. It can't get worse. It can. It can. It can. And so I think there's something to that. Like, Mark Stein said he would take Boston over New York because New York has been too up and down. And it's like, I understand every syllable of what you just said. I also wonder if Boston didn't get the first 5 months of their season just completely wiped off the tape. Like, any flaws, any struggles that the Celtics had to start the season, no one cares about because now Tatum's back and it's different. So it's like, so then what? I think we get stuck sometimes, and I just wonder if the Knicks don't present the Celtics, particularly this year's Celtics, with an even worse matchup. Because if you sell out on the Towns drives, he's showing now that Mike Brown is showing now that they can get him open at the top of the key, that they can get him the ball in his spots, that they can have him set the screens higher and just have him shoot deeper threes, and he doesn't care. He'll take it. Like, whatever it is, I think this Knicks team is versatile in a way that last year's team was very badly trying to be. And they kind of tapped into this right at the end of the year with Delon Wright and Landry Shamet. But now Shamet is like a regular part of their, like, he closes for them all the time over Mikal Bridges when they need more honed in, like, this role in the corner, defending the ball. So I didn't mean to, I did mean to go on a tangent based off your point, but like, I meant mostly to highlight that you're not the only person who thinks the Knicks win over the Celtics felt a little weird, but I also think that these teams are now both weirder in specific ways that kind of lend themselves to that matchup potentially being able to be weird in that same way again. Like, maybe it does come down to Hack a Mitch, and Joe deciding how much he really wants to do that, like how much that matters to him. I don't know, right? But like, I think I think a lot of people are like, oh, this team is better than this team because I thought they were better going into the season. Boston is forcing everyone to throw all of that out the window. And that is my actual point here, which is like, no matter what you thought going into the season, no matter what you thought in the middle of the season, you really have to open your eyes right now and just look and just take in what you can, because this is all new information. And I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated to get some of these answers come playoff time. But um, maybe one of those answers is Boston's scheme is playoff proof, and the rim protection holds up. Kata doesn't get in foul trouble. Vooch doesn't need to move all over the place. He's just doing, and it's enough, you know? I'm not writing it off. I do think the Knicks present a harder challenge than they did last year. And I think the Celtics, even if the players that are back are better because they have a year more of experience, I wonder if it's not a worse enough team overall to kind of not collapse in the playoffs, but just not keep that edge that they, even with such a glaring flaw in no backup center right now or whatever, like they've kept their edge. Detroit, glaring flaw, no secondary creator, but they've kept their edge because they check the other boxes hard enough. You and I agree that that isn't sustainable in a playoff setting. I wonder if the same can't be said of the Celtics defense because it's a similar situation to me. And I don't know the answer. I got Jack for you. But there's one way to find out, and it's coming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, to be clear, I did pick the Knicks preseason. That was my pick to come out of the East for most of the season. I've stuck with that. And I do think they present a difficult matchup to the Celtics in some rights. Especially if you look at Mikal and OG, I feel like those are the best two players built to stop the Jays and built to stop the Celtics offense. And then you look at the front court size. So I definitely see a scenario where the Knicks win. And I mean, frankly, you look at the Knicks team from last year compared to this year. This year's team is more talented. They have more depth. They're just overall better. And the Celtics, while they've exceeded expectations, overall they're a bit worse. So I definitely see a scenario where the Knicks win it. And I think it's going to be a close series either way. So yeah, no, I definitely understand going with the Knicks. I think like the difference between like the Pistons and the Celtics, you look at these glaring flaws, is that despite the Pistons' success in the regular season, a lot of these metrics suggest that they're not that good of an offensive team, both in terms of like overall offensive rating, they're a bit above average, but half court offensive rating, it would be really, if you look at history of the last 25 years, it would be a miracle if they made it to the NBA Finals, whereas the Celtics, despite having some of these defensive flaws on paper, that hasn't really presented itself in any way in the regular season. With that being said, let's focus in on the Knicks a little bit more. Are there any sort of weak points besides just this team is super weird and super inconsistent that you could see biting them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I would say it's like the causes for that inconsistency. Like, we've been trying to figure this out all season. Kind of like, what's up with this team? What is this team? Who is this team? And I think the answer has kind of been in front of us the entire time. It's this team is who they need to be. This team pretty consistently rises and or falls to the occasion. Like, whatever that is, they're going to show up with that level. Like the other day, they're in Brooklyn playing the Nets. The Nets are not good. And they're also, I think, the only team in NBA history to declare openly before a season that they are going to try to lose. Like, I know Philadelphia and the process was like a thing, but Josai literally, like the governor of the team, told reporters before the season, well, you get a better draft pick if you lose more. So you can guess what we're going to be trying to do. You can yeah, we can. We've been doing it. You're not supposed to say that. The Knicks beat them by 1. The Knicks went up against the Golden State Warriors. Omer Yurtseven signed off the street back into the NBA to be in their rotation. The Knicks won by 3. Yeah, those are not performances that make you confident about a team and their ability to give their best when their best is needed, even if they're not at their best. But they won the cup. Go look at the Spurs. Go look at the teams that they've beat. It's everyone except one. They've lost like one game all month. The Knicks beat them by like 30. Wasn't even, it was emphatic. Wemby played healthy, right? So, like, this team consistently sinks to whatever they deem is the lowest amount of effort they need to give. to win a game. Sometimes they don't even win the game as a result. Sometimes they get blown out as a result. And sometimes it works and they start trying once they're down 17 and they win. They start trying in the second half. Not to start the second half, but after they got yelled at halftime, went out there for the second half and then continued to mail it in. So then Mike Brown was so mad, he called timeout 2 minutes and 11 seconds into the half. And then still after that timeout, they come out like a little sluggish. But then like 4 minutes into the second half and on, something clicks and they find it. That is why people hate watching this team this year. It's why Knick fans, Knick content creators have come out and said they find this team unlikable. They find this team entitled. All these things that the fan base that's usually just glad to see a player hustle for a loose ball is all of a sudden like, yeah, I don't care that we're the sixth best offense in the league because these guys don't care either. They want to see the players care. They don't care about the numbers, the stats, they deliver whatever you want on the number sheet. They want a team that looks like they give a damn, and sometimes the Knicks just don't. And I think that has been hard for the New York market to come to terms with, particularly given the coach that was here before, Mike Brown, what people associated with him, what people kind of blind spotted when it came to him. Like Jalen Brunson played 50 minutes and scored 55 points in a game in the middle of the regular season last year. Because of that, they beat the Wizards in overtime. That was Tibbs, right? Mike Brown probably would have thrown Kolek and Dadier in by the third. You guys don't give a crap? All right, I don't either. Kids, get in there, you know? But like last year, the Knicks were 0-10 against the Cavs, Celtics, and Thunder. This year, they have the tiebreaker over Boston. Swept by the Pistons. They're 0-1 against the Thunder. They play them again in a couple days. They are better against the top teams in the NBA. Last year, they were literally winless. Now, they're winning more games than they lose against these teams. And they're not going to finish the regular season, I don't know, like with 39 wins. Like people acted would happen if they fired Tibbs. It's like, no, they can still be a good team. They can reach higher highs, but sometimes the lower lows are part of the higher highs, right? Sometimes keeping up that level of just keep that just every day, we're going to give you that same level of, that's very important to giving a team stability. But when you're trying to reach the top of the top, sometimes you have to be willing to have a box or two unchecked if it means you have a combination that's a winning formula. I think Mike Brown is getting close to figuring out that winning formula for these Knicks in a way that Tom Thibodeau might have, but didn't in his time with the team for myriad reasons. Some his fault, some not. Some players' fault, some not. Some a governorship, front office's fault, some not, right? It's humans. All this stuff is multifaceted and layered. But what matters is the Knicks brought in a coach and they basically said, you have 82 games and then we want a ring. And as insane as that was for the New York Knicks of all teams to do, sorry, but like, gotta say that at some, like, for this organization to put the bar that high and not accept anything less. And they're like on track, like they look like they're not out of the pit. It's a unique situation. And it might have a unique ending. You might get a unique NBA champion out of this situation. I don't think the Knicks are like this team of destiny. I think the Thunder, the Spurs, if their young players are making good decisions on defense and their veterans are making shots on offense, I think the Nuggets, same thing there. Like Cam Johnson, big swing factor. But like there are teams that are more than equipped to dismantle this Knicks group in a postseason setting, particularly. But there are also teams that are more than equipped to dismantle the Timberwolves and the Celtics and the Pistons and the Cavaliers and the Timberwolves. Everyone has a matchup that you can look at. They don't want to see them. They don't want to see that. Probably besides the defending champions. And even then, people are like, oh, Minnesota, the San Antonio keeps beating them. You never know. Like, even people aren't even sure about the defending champion. So, to me, one thing is clear. No one's ever going to be sure about you until you do it, right? I remember when Giannis was Robin. I remember when Embiid was not. He's a great talent, but he's just not one of the best players in the world because you can't depend on him. And it takes one run. It takes 3 months. It takes 2 weeks if it's in the finals or the conference final to totally flip perception and all of a sudden everyone is like, oh well, we always knew this guy. What? You just told me 6 months ago that this team needed to trade him to win. Now you're saying you always knew he had this in him. He just needed it brought out of him. Like, no. Why are we lying? Come on. I think Jokic couldn't win until he was the best player in the world. I think Giannis couldn't be a number one option until he was the 2021 Finals MVP. And I think Jalen Brunson can't be the best player on a championship team until he gets it done. I think all these things are possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of interesting points there. You kind of offhandedly mentioned the Timberwolves, and it's funny. I'm not the first person to point this out, but I feel like the Timberwolves and Knicks are super similar. And being in the East does benefit the Knicks, in my opinion. The East might be a deeper conference, but it has less top end talent, and I do think the Knicks are a lot better positioned to come out of the East than the Timberwolves are to come out of the West. And I would say, in terms of just like absolute upside, I think the Knicks probably have the most absolute upside in this conference. I think there's a 95% chance that whoever comes out of the West is going to be my pick to win it all.
Yep.
However, if
Yep.
I could see one team winning it from the East, it would probably be the Knicks, maybe the Celtics. But I think in terms of like getting there, I trust the Celtics a little bit more. But if you were to tell me a team from the East won it, it might actually be the Knicks. And the other team that they remind me of, it's like going to a different sport, but it kind of reminds me of this Eagles team from a couple of years ago when they won the Super Bowl, and it was just such a weird season for them. They were very good, by all accounts, but the vibe around the team wasn't, and it was like, are we sure Sirianni's a good coach? Are we sure that AJ Brown's happy? It's all this noise. The fan base didn't seem to like the team that much, but it was like, hey, they're actually like pretty good, and then they go on this crazy run, especially with their defense, and win the Super Bowl. And I don't know, there's just a lot of similarities between those two teams. Obviously, it's a different sport, so it's a little bit of an outside the box comparison. But just from the standpoint where it's like, hey, the vibes with this team don't totally seem right, but there's not a ton of evidence. I mean, other than like playing down to competition stuff like that. But there's not a ton of evidence to suggest that they can't get back to the conference finals and represent the East. And there's overall a lot to like with this team. So yeah, I think they do have a ton of upside. I'm curious to get your perspective on this because I think if there's one like hold up with this team and one sort of surprise with the Mike Brown error, I think there's been a lot of good things that he's done. He's utilized the bench a lot more. The front office adding some bench players has certainly helped in that regard. But for me, I don't feel like the offense has been all that different in terms of ball movement, in terms of not relying on Brunson a ton. And I feel like that is maybe my biggest concern with this team, besides having a point of attack defender and a rim protector who aren't really all that good on defense. I think that paired with just the lack of ball movement and sort of involvement from everyone else in the starting lineup, especially, is my biggest holdup with the Knicks. When I look at them, I see a team that has obviously a ton of talent. I don't think I'm breaking news there. But when you have guys like OG and Mikel, who I think have another level to reach on offense, and you have Cat, who can be a monster and who every week it seems like he's like, oh, I'm unclear on what my role is, and all this stuff. And then watching the game, sometimes it's like, do they realize how much talent they have around Brunson? And it doesn't seem like the offense has been all that creative. With that being said, I haven't watched the Knicks nearly as closely as you have, so I'm curious to get your perspective just on how this new look offense has looked and if that's a concern for you in any way.
I think to start, Jalen Brunson's usage, I want to say, is up from last season. Don't cite that or bet money on it, but I think it's up. And he's averaging fewer minutes per game, but a higher usage rate. And I think that is pretty much the proof of your observations that for all the talk about Brunson and uh, less being more, maybe, and all these things. Like they've gone almost the other way. He's been scoring more points with less efficient shit. Like um, I understand that, and I think it all adds up and makes sense. Now I have to poke some holes in it. The Knicks are not really playing faster than they did last year, leading some people to think maybe that was just as much a personnel thing as it was a scheme thing for Thibodeau. But they are shooting five, and when I looked the other day, it was 5 points. I'm not sure what it is now, but just the other day, after like 60 something, it was 5.0. They're shooting 5.0 more 3 pointers per game on average. A full five. Like they were in the bottom 10, and now they're in the top. Like, it is true that if you check the GPS after, it is going to say this many miles driven, this much time to get to the destination. But Mike Brown is doing it in a way where he might not be saving you gasoline, but he's not taking that really really tough bend on the mountain where your tires are getting worn down, and then maybe your mud flaps are getting scratched up by rocks. He's not he's taking the same amount of gas to get the same distance. They're going to win pretty much the same amount of games, yada yada. But the way he's doing it, right? The check engine light was on halfway through the drive last year. Right now, Mitchell Robinson has played almost 60 games. Like he's on pace to play about 60 games this season. Yeah, man. Like that's the difference, that they're going into April with expected full health. Like Shamit, McBride back, no one else is hurt. It's April, we're good. As opposed to, we lost Mitch 4 months ago, we lost Randall 2 months ago, and we lost Josh last week. You, Alec Burks, are now starting in the conference finals against the Indiana Pacers. What? Like, well, no, they started Burks in the second round the year before, but you get the, like, it's just the, you're right that bunch of things are the same. I'm here to tell you that the things that are different enough that there is definitely a change that has been made in approach. The Knicks liked corner threes last year. Tom Thibodeau would tell reporters often that nobody values corner threes more than him, which was a strong statement. And it also just ended up being empty because the Knicks consistently did not prioritize corner 3 point attempts. Like when it came down to it, they didn't even rank in the top Y teams in the league. Pick a number. They weren't in the top whatever. Like they were bottom 5, bottom 8, bottom 10 in all the 3 point shooting stat. Mike Brown is using the same amount of gas. He's taking that bumpy road and he's going slow over it instead of the windy highway that wears down your brakes, tires, gears, engine. Your driving ability as a driver, you're getting tired going 60 an hour, trying to keep up with all these turns. Yeah, Mike might be cruising it right now going 25 on a cobblestone road, but like he's going to get to the end of the street. He's going to make it there. That's what he's trying to do. He's also, in all fairness, like, yes, the scheme, the system's the same, but he's been experimenting all season, different groupings of personnel and whatever. There's going to be growing pains. I think those all kind of just get like filtered out by luck. Like we just kind of say things level out. All things considered, I think Mike Brown has made the changes to the Knicks offense that were realistically going to be made. I think there are some changes that people would like to still see or would like to see him actually make instead of what they deem like a half-assing. And I think that comes down to unrealistic expectations of the organization, the front office, the talent, the personnel, whatever it is. Like, they're probably not going to go with OG at the 5 as a consistent thing. That sounds awesome. It works at times. They did it in the playoffs against Embiid. He kicked ass. But just because it worked, the sample size was so small, it was so effective, that doesn't mean it's worth trying against a million other teams or whatever it is. Like, there are some things that are just not going to happen. And I think some people, kind of unfair to Tibbs, attributed them to him. When in reality, it's like, well, does Jalen want to do that? Does Carl want to do that? Does Mikal want to do that? Does OG? Everything can't just be Tom's fault all the time. I think it was a bit of an awakening for people when they saw how many things were the same under Brown. They've realized a little bit, like, maybe I complained about that too much. But I was right about this. I was right about that. But Landry Shamet, right? That guy barely played last year. Now we were talking earlier about how he closes over Mikal Bridges. It's at least 7 games this season where Mike Brown has closed the game 5 minutes or more, the end of the game, all the way through with Shamet over Bridges. 7 games. One opponent was the Kings, right? But one opponent was the Sixers in Philly, in Mikal's hometown. Benched him down the stretch. Mike Brown is willing to do some things with this group that I don't know that Tom Thibodeau would have or was, or maybe Tibbs, if he tried these things, would have gotten fired and it would have made sense. But now, because there's a new coach, he kind of has the plausible deniability of, I don't know how you guys do things here, but we're going to do things this way. And the first half of the season was a political standoff of the coaches and the players trying to figure out who gives in, who doesn't, we never really know. But we can say confidently, looking at the Knicks season thus far, they're figuring a lot out. Guys like Karl Towns and Mikal Bridges are providing the value that they're supposed to the basketball team on a nightly basis. Fans might disagree. Fans might think that's not enough. That they still lost the trade. That's okay. They're trying to win a championship, not every trade. I promise they did not think when they sent 5 first-round picks for Mikal that he was going to blossom into a young Kevin Durant and just become someone that he never was. I don't want to say they lost a trade on purpose, but it's they made that trade because they looked at their other options and liked that one best. They liked that better than sitting on the picks. They liked that better than trying to swap the picks for someone, not getting anyone, and then eventually needing to cough up so many rotation guys to make the deal work that now they have no players or picks left. They just have 4 stars and a couple bigs, a couple of rotation vet bigs. That's the story of how many contenders every year. They do so much to get the guys in the building. Well, just fill the rest out with, it's the NBA, everyone's talented. Then it's March and you don't have rim protection, playmaking, or depth. And it's I wonder how that happened. I think that this Knicks group kind of has it all, man. And I think I'll go to one more authority. We did Bontemps and we did Stein. Now, I'm throwing it over your way. I'm going to quote Bill Simmons. He said to Zach Lowe the other day, as a Celtics fan, I don't want to see the Knicks in the playoffs. I think he's got it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like that analogy about the car. When you think about the 3-point volume, I do think that's something I overlooked a little bit. And I mean, it's a really solid pitch, without a doubt. I still do have concerns about just, in some ways, the predictability and then just how inconsistent a Towns or Bridges can be. But I mean, like we said before, there's no such thing as a perfect team. I think the Thunder have flaws in some ways.
Yes.
So you're never going to have a perfect team, and there's always some concerns to weigh. It's just how much you factor certain things in. And yeah, I do agree with Simmons' point to an extent where it's in the East, out of all the teams, the Knicks would be the team I would at least want to see. I'd much rather play the Cavs in the second round or the Pistons. But as it's positioned currently, it looks like it's going to be a 2-3 matchup in the second round with the Knicks and Celtics, and potentially, I mean, in reality, it could be a trip to the NBA Finals on the line. At least the way I view the Cavs. We can get into them in a second. But yeah, I do think that's a perfectly fair assessment. I think the Celtics can expose some of the Knicks' flaws, but I think the Knicks can expose some of the Celtics' flaws. It would be a really, really interesting series, and I do tend to agree that the Knicks would be the most difficult matchup for the Celtics, or really most teams in the East. Maybe the Pistons they don't match up with as well, but I mean the Pistons have so many flaws, I don't think it matters as much. I feel like we've talked pretty thoroughly about the Knicks, Celtics, Pistons, and then the one team we're really missing in terms of this Eastern Conference contention picture would be the Cavs. I personally do have certain concerns, and it just goes beyond like Harden's not good in the playoffs. I think that's valid. For me, it's the lack of like true on-ball stoppers. I think Keon Ellis, he's a nice role player. Jalen Tyson, he's been a real revelation this season. I don't know if that's enough to get you through to the NBA Finals. And then I would say just some of the continuity. They just don't have as much continuity, and these guys are in and out of the lineup as is. You make a big trade for Harden. I feel like that's difficult for me to totally buy into them, but I do feel like as positioned, they have a really nice path to the conference finals. I think you mentioned earlier that you might like them slightly better than the Celtics, but yeah, just in general, where are you at with this Cavs team?
All in on them when they traded for Harden. When they made that move, I was like, wow, this is a team that understands the moment. They see the next 1.5 to 3 years being their best chance to make something shake here, and they're saying, hmm, screw everything after 2029. Who gives us the best chance to win before then? That to me, like, we just got on the Pistons for this earlier, right? Not identifying the moment, not seizing the opportunity. I think Cleveland, I want to say people like kind of conveniently forget about them. Like, yeah, you talk about them with the big players in the East, but it's kind of like because you have to sometimes, and other times you're like, this might be the best team in the conference. I don't know why I'm always so low on them. I think they addressed some of that factor of their team with Schroeder and Ellis. I do think those acquisitions are going really under the radar because of they traded for freaking James Harden, so that's going to get a little more attention maybe. But Schroeder and Ellis allow them to play 48 minutes of Cleveland Cavaliers Kenny Atkinson basketball. And I don't think it's as direct as like, well, yeah, because when Donovan and Harden sit, then you throw Schroeder and no, it's about the Harden Keon lineups, and then the Dennis Donovan, and then the Donovan Harden, and then this is Kenny in flow state. He is just vibing with this Cavaliers rotation. He is feeling out what they have, what they need, what they can do, what they're missing, how to give it to them. It's a process that I'm encouraged by, even if like the Knicks season as a whole, it's like, oh, they're figuring some stuff out. It's like, yes, but what if they figure it out? What if they can cross that line? Because then all of a sudden it's, oh, you spent all season doing this and you still don't even know what your offensive identity is, versus they spent all season fine tuning their offensive identity and finally figured this out. Like, that's a huge momentum shift. And I think Cleveland bringing in three guards, right? Like, Ellis is a wing functionally for the and literally for them, but like size wise, ball handling wise, he's got some duties. They brought in three guards at the deadline. I don't know what team is gonna just like gel right away, but they've gotten close. Like they've looked good and they play hard. I was just watching them the other day against the Magic. To me, the Harden without Mitchell lineups really stood out in that game as like, okay, that's the killer, right? When Donovan's out there, he's very good, but Paolo is having a great game. Paolo's actually matching him. But when Donovan sits and it's Harden out there, the Magic look like they're tanking. Like they look like they have nothing for this offense, and that's their whole thing is defense. So that's kind of awkward. I'm in on this Cavs group, but like we were saying earlier, I think they could beat Boston. I think they'd lose to New York. I think Mobley could swing a series against Boston. I think someone like Struess could swing it the other way against New York, where like that's someone who maybe Carl Towns keeps getting on a switch and just obliterate it, like just dunking through the rim. And you've got to play Ellis instead of Strus and like almost lean into the small, tough idea. Like whatever it is, I think the Knicks can give this Cavs team a hard time. I think Brunson has outperformed Mitchell every time they go head to head in the postseason. Jazz, Mavs, Knicks, Cavs, it has not mattered. Donovan goes home in the first round when those guys match up. Just it's never not happened. There has never been a playoff series between Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell that did not result in Donovan Mitchell being a first round exit. That's just true. And a lot of NBA media will still say, "Yeah, but Mitchell's better than Brunson," because he's athletic. He's got that. It's like, right, when they play the sport against each other, one guy keeps winning. At some point, that's got to mean something. So like, I'll be Russell over Wilt, for forever. I think there's something to, and I'm not calling you out. It's the most recent example when you were like, yeah, the Knicks won last year, but that kind of ness about them, people felt that way about the Celtics until they won. Then they won, and now it's like, well, they've got the championship DNA. People felt that way about the Nuggets until they won. People felt that way about the Wolves right now. It's like, yeah, they're talented, but they're not a winning team. Right, until they do. I think the Cavaliers are set to maybe disprove some of those narratives. Harden playoff failure. He's not even known as like a playoff dropper. Like he's known as like a playoff like zeroer. I think he'll have a great postseason for them. I think Donovan Mitchell will too. I just wonder if they run into the Knicks sooner than they want, what happens? Because I would take New York in that series in 6 games, and I would expect them all to be pretty close. Like I think it would be a good series. I just would give the edge to the Knicks. The same way that if the Cavs and the Celtics went at it, I think with Harden on this Cleveland team, I think I'd give the edge to Cleveland. I think they could make the most of Boston's front court and they could attack that scheme in versatile enough ways where as Missoula adjusts over the course of the series, Harden and Donovan just keep coming. And I think this East is awesome because I don't think there's a team that just like looks like they're gonna run the table. It's a little bit of rock, paper, scissors, where the Knicks beat the Cavs beat the Celtics. I think the Knicks probably beat the Celtics, but could the Sixers beat the Pistons? Could the Sixers be, like there's this disorder that I enjoy very much in the Eastern Conference. And I think my official take is if I had to pick a team to win, it would be the Knicks because I believe in their advantages taking precedence more often than not. Like I think at the end of the day, the advantages that they'll have over a Cleveland with whether it's Carl living at the line or living off shots from behind it, whatever it is that they carve out, I think it ends up winning out. But I think Cleveland would do the same to Boston because of the front court. I think Boston could do the same to Detroit or a team above them in the standings very easily. Like this is a fun tire fire of a conference right now in like the best way. Like it's not bad. It's the West. It's if you lose one game, you're now the 6th seed. But if you win, you're the 2nd seed. This is what the West was for years.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to totally discount Cleveland because I do think they check a lot of boxes in terms of being able to make it out of the East and be a true title contender. I do personally still have concerns about the offensive profile of a Mobley Allen front court. I feel like injuries have played a role to an extent with the Cavs' playoff shortcomings, but the spacing also with that front court has been a little bit rough, and I do think obviously the rim protection advantages are immense. Just from a floor spacing standpoint, I am concerned about that. Their trade deadline moves were awesome. I love how you brought up Keon Ellis and Schroeder. Not just Harden. Harden is a great fit. I'll talk about him in a second, but having those two guys off the bench is such a massive advantage for this team. And the Cavs, I think they're probably the deepest team in the East. They just have so many really good players. And I mean, from shooting like Sam Merrill and Max Strus now that he's back, having that kind of shooting is awesome. And then Jalen Tyson's been a total revelation for this team. And then, yeah, trading for Harden was huge. I think he helps them down the stretch of games a lot. Just having a guy that can take the pressure off of Mitchell and having a lot more size in that backcourt, I think, is massive for this team. So there is just a ton to like about the Cavs, and they profile really nicely. I keep going back to who is their defensive stopper, and I know Keon Ellis is a nice point of attack stopper, but to deal with these bigger wins, and that's where I sort of disagree in terms of a series against Boston. I like the Celtics in that series. They've had success against the Cavs in the regular season, even before Tatum got back, for what it's worth. But also, it's just like they don't have a natural matchup for Tatum or Brown. I know Keon, like I said, I feel like he's a guy that he could guard a Brunson nicely. Not that he would shut him down, because you're never going to be able to do that with Brunson totally. But if he's dealing with like a shifty guard, I feel like that's where he really thrives. And then Jalen Tyson, he's been a really awesome piece for this team, but is he good enough to be a primary on ball stopper on a guy like Tatum or Brown, or even like guarding some of the guys in the Knicks? I feel like it could get tricky for the Cavs. And yeah, and then just in general, they haven't had as much time on the court with Harden as I would like. I mean,
That's what
he's
I kept coming back to like earlier in the show is just thinking about them. The first thing that comes to my mind is just didn't not the didn't have the time. They don't have the reps, the rehearsal, I think is the word I use.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's where my holdup is. In general, you look at teams that make big trades at the deadline. Typically, it's more of a next year thing or 2 years down the road type of thing. Whereas in the playoffs, they might put up a great fight in the first two rounds, or they might even make it to the conference finals, but they're usually not the teams playing in the NBA finals. I think maybe the best example of like bigger trades at the deadline would be 2 years ago with the Mavericks, but they weren't integrating a player of Harden's caliber. It was Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. So I just think that's a whole different monster. And I think that's where some of my concerns are with this team. But as currently positioned, they're the fourth seed. We talked about our concerns with the Pistons in a potential second round matchup with them, or maybe the Pistons get upset. I think the Cavs have a very clear path to the conference finals. And from there, who knows? I don't think they match up horribly against the Celtics or Knicks. So I definitely think they have a chance, but for me, they'd be third in this Eastern Conference playoff picture.
Yeah, I think the bracket is really like I keep coming back to this because I'll say it all in a sentence, right? If it's going to be Cleveland versus New York or Boston, I cannot predict that series. Because if it's New York, I'm taking them. If it's Boston, I'm taking Cleveland. And if so it's like we'll see, but I'm laying out the rock paper scissors. I'm telling you who I think is who. We'll find out. I don't know who's going to make it out because I don't know who's going to finish in what seeding, but like I think the Knicks if they lose in these playoffs, I think the Knicks maybe that's my hot take is my hot take that I'll drop on your show is the Knicks. I think they lose to a Western Conference team in the NBA playoffs, which is I think they go all the way, um, at least to the finals. And I want to say that's just as much about New York being versatile and having different answers to different questions as it is us not really knowing exactly what answers Cleveland had. Like we know they have a bunch of different lineups and configurations, but the Knicks we know the range and we know how bad it can get and we know how good it can get. I almost wonder if the devil that you know is better than the one that you don't coming into this postseason with regard to Cleveland. That lack of reps, that lack of experience. I want to take the Knicks to come out of the East. And I really want to say it's the Thunder in the West, but you just don't know with Wemby. But I think I'm confident enough to say that I don't see the Nuggets or any of these other teams having it. Like, if the Spurs young guys are hitting threes and Wemby is Wemby, that can be who beats the Thunder. If not, Thunder probably make the finals because they're really freaking good.
No, absolutely. I think the matchups is so crucial, and I mean we have just a few weeks until we officially know, and I feel like I'm going to be debating it up until that point. I do think for me it's between the Celtics and Knicks in the East and the Thunder and Spurs in the West. It's going to be some combination of that in the NBA Finals for me. But yeah, I can't discount some of these other teams entirely. I just think those are my four for the NBA title race right now in each conference. But yeah, I think we talked super in depth about all these teams. We can move ahead to some audience questions, which are somewhat
Absolutely.
somewhat adjacent to what we talked about. The first one comes from my guy, Colin Hatfield. He wants to know our pick to come out of the East. After the Cade injury. To summarize, Kris likes the Knicks. I like the Celtics. But yeah, I mean that was a great question, and Colin was kind of one step ahead of us in this one.
Yep.
Next one comes from my guy Josh Mighty. He wants to know predictions for the play-in both conferences, and then yeah, just sort of how do you see that 7 through 10 seed shaken out, and then do you think any of these teams can upset a top two seed? I think we talked about the Sixers having more upside for you and the Hornets for me, but yeah, just go over that in both conferences.
I kind of want to say, oh, this is really difficult, but I'm thinking about saying the Sixers and the Magic make it out of the Eastern Conference play-in. I think Paolo has there's a remontada going on right now. There is a renaissance. There's something is happening, and it's resulting in good Magic basketball, and Paolo's responsible for it. I got some pieces to put together, but there's I don't know what is it? Maybe new breakfast cereal, maybe a new playlist driving to practices or games. Something changed in the air because Paolo's a different player now, and he's really good. And that doesn't make them some world beater, but it just might be enough to push their defense up to that stage with the Hornets offense that we talked about earlier, where you kind of get that battle. I I'm interested if Orlando has enough guys back healthy, but I think that the Hornets are kind of the easy pick outside of the Sixers. In the West, I if the Suns stay in that range, I still like them. I'll be in on the Suns. I liked them before the season to make the playoffs, at least the play-in, and I was told to get a job, to get a life, all these different things. Now they're 40-33. Heyo. So definitely the Suns, and not just because the Warriors have seemingly thrown in the towel on their entire season. I think they might be hoping to miss the play in at this point to just get to start summer earlier. I would be doing Kawhi Leonard a disservice if I did not acknowledge him as one of the five best basketball players alive right now, today. And so I think it's fair to throw the Clippers in there as well. So I'm gonna go Suns, Clips, and Sixers, Magic. I'll have a risk taking streak in me today, and I'll go Orlando.
There we go. Yeah, I like that. I think for the West, it's pretty straightforward. I think it's going to be the Suns and Clippers. I don't think the Blazers have enough offensive juice as much as I enjoy watching this team. And then the Warriors have just totally thrown the towel in on the season. So yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. And then I do see the Spurs taking care of business against the Suns and then the Thunder taking care of business against the Clippers. I don't know if those series would be all that competitive, quite frankly. You look at the East, and it's crazy because like the Hawks right now, they're a number 5 seed, whereas just a few weeks ago they were like in that 8-9 range. So things can change really quickly, and to that point, I actually think the Sixers are going to escape the play-in. They're half game behind the Raptors right now, and the Raptors, I just don't trust them against good teams, quite frankly. So I think the Raptors are going to dip down a bit. So I'm going to say Raptors dip to the 7 range, but they still make the playoffs, obviously, and they just have to go through the play-in.
Mm.
I think I just trust the Sixers a little bit more. So I'm going Raptors 7, and then I'm going with the Hornets at 8.
Process, you saying? It's just
Man, I can't get there in the playoffs because hypothetically it's Knicks or Celtics that'd be playing. I think it would be maybe a 6 game series, but I think either Boston or New York could take care of Philly there.
I I'm gonna say it just so I can say I said it somewhere. This is a worthless hot take because if you had me pick, I'd give you Boston today. But I think if someone could beat the Celtics early, I like the team with the three guys that combined for 85 points last night, and Tyrese Maxey wasn't even playing. I like the guys with the center that can score 40, with the point guard that can score 40, with the rookie that can score 30, with the vet and PG that can score 30. Yeah, Philly, there could be emotion detected front door there. think I think there might be something if they get like a insanely perfect playoff bracket where they can maybe make it out of the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I can't discount them entirely. I think they're like I think I said it earlier, but their like delta is just so wide. I don't know what to expect. If they were to play the Celtics, I would still pick the Celtics, but like I'm not going to discount them entirely. I think their upside is just so high. I mean, it's really comes down to the health factor where I just can't totally trust that team. With that being said, I do have them escaping the play-in, so maybe I'm trusting them a little bit too much. And then, yeah, for me, I'm going with the Hornets. I think I just lean towards their offense over the Magic. For most of the year, I couldn't quit the Magic. It was like a joke on this podcast. Whenever the Magic would come up, I was like, I still think they could do it. I can't get there anymore. They're currently on a 6 game losing streak. And it hasn't been Paolo's fault at all. I think Paolo's looked really good since post All Star break. But man, their offense overall and the uncertainty of Franz's health,
Yeah, no,
I'm out.
it's
I'm
there's
out.
I do not blame you for a second.
I'm out. That offense is a rough watch. Jamal Mosley, he looks like a dead man walking. I think if there was any coach to be fired, I would put my entire bank account on Jamal Mosley. It looks like a disconnected group. Whereas the Hornets, since the turn of the calendar, they've been playing connected. Their offense is really good. And I think out of all the playing teams in both conferences, that's the team I have the most confidence in potentially pulling off an upset, especially if they go against the Pistons. I don't think I would bet on the Raptors to do that if they play the Pistons. Maybe the Sixers if they fall down to that 8 range, or if the Pistons fall to 2, whatever the case may be. The Hawks, who knows? We actually have a question about them in a second. But yeah, uh, I I think the Hornets are the team that I feel the most comfortable with overall. And who knows? Maybe that's gonna backfire, and it's like the Hornets have no experience and they just finish like 10th or something. But
Yeah.
I'm all in on the Hornets wave. All right, next question. Again, another one from my guy Josh. A football question this time. He said the Dolphins strike me as an interesting team to monitor for the draft. They have the 11th pick and the 30th pick after the Waddle trade, and a ton of dead money. Where do you think they should go with these round one picks? I don't know how much of a football guy you
I'm a
are.
big football guy. I'm a big
Yes,
football.
sir.
I'm a New York Giants fan, so I guess definitely in the mindset of trying to weaponize cap space and make the most of a maybe not particularly lovely situation. I think the Giants are on the right track. I think the Dolphins are trying. They're trying. They've done some bold things. I don't necessarily hate them. I just think they have their maybe like priority wires crossed a little bit. I like the head coaching hire. Just like I like the stuff they do, but to spend that much money on the question mark that Malik Willis is, I wonder just how confident Jeff Half is from knowing him in Green Bay. Maybe there's something he knows from behind the scenes that we don't. But I think that kind of all sets me up to just say this team is nowhere near a situation where they should be doing anything other than drafting the best player available and turning in that card as soon as possible. This is not the time to be like, oh, well, we could use that outside linebacker help. You know, Jalen Phillips is gone now, and yeah, no, you're gonna allow a lot of points. You're gonna allow a lot of touchdowns, and teams are gonna have their way on you, even with the defensive head coach for this first season with all the dead money you're eating and all these different. If I'm them, I'm looking forward as much as possible. I'm drafting the best players I can get. And I'm also, I know the question didn't ask about this, but I'm also trying to maybe like muck up the salary sheet as much as possible if it means having it clean as soon as possible. So not like a tanking season, but like an island of misfit toy like beacon. Like, hey, trade us your guys that you that will restructure their deals or will figure some but um just go get the best talent you can because you're doing the right thing and resetting, but you've put a loud timer on your reset with the contract that you gave Willis. It's like he kind of has to be. I don't get how you see I don't get how you see the quarterback market have like a starting level player available on the street at like week 5 every year for some team to sign and be like, yes, I need to go rush and pay 30 million a year to go get this backup. Like, I think Willis got written off too early. I think he has legit potential. I don't understand paying him like a currently solid starter. It feels like there's no upside. Like it feels like if things go well, then he lives up to the deal. Obviously, that's writing off a lot of his potential, which I just said I wasn't doing. But I think that's what I'm trying to say. It feels like is that there's not much room for error. I think you have to optimize that by just getting as much talent in the building as possible. I can't even think of a spin that's like, well, they could really be this kind of team. Or the more I try and like filibuster, the less I have. That they need to just get talent and move on.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think when you look at that investment they made in Willis, and you look at the NFL draft landscape, I'm not an NFL draft expert like I am for the NBA by any means, but this wide receiver class is absolutely loaded. So especially with that pick 11, I think they're gonna lean wide receiver just to give Willis any sort of support there. I think if you look at a guy like Jordan Tyson, who was a consensus top 5 to 10 pick throughout most of the cycle, and then had some injury issues, I think that's an intriguing name. Makai Lemon from USC is another good option there. And then later in the draft, I can't give you as many specific names. However, I would say just getting some protection around him, I think would be a good idea for the Dolphins. But yeah, definitely interested to see what they do. I have super low expectations for them next year, but maybe they could go on a nice little rebuild, and we've seen teams rebuild pretty quickly in the NFL. So hopefully the future is bright in Miami.
Yeah, maybe like a Casey Concepcion, like if he falls, someone from the league to get the ball to, he gets open. So maybe that's if you want to name, maybe like early second, something to see what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this wide receiver class is so deep. So if you like someone at pick 11 and you think you can get someone really talented like a Casey Concepcion or Omar Omar Cooper from Indiana, whatever the case may be, late
Yeah, yeah,
first
like a
round,
little
that
later
would be
on,
the
yeah.
move. Yeah, that could definitely be the move. This is an interesting class, and yeah, the NFL draft is super interesting. I don't know nearly as much as I do about the NBA, but it's always fun to follow this time of the year. Last two questions here going over on Instagram. First one comes from my guy Ryan Druin, kind of a two-parter about the Hawks. We did kind of glaze over them in the Eastern Conference landscape. So I think this is sort of online with what we're talking about. But yeah, he wants to know, are the Hawks being slept on, and is Nikhil Alexander Walker an elite role player?
Ooh. I I want to say the Hawks are not being slept on because I think everyone's acknowledging right now that like they're having an amazing hot streak against not amazing opponents that is getting them probably to where they should be in the standings. Like, not above where they should. Like, this is now making up for maybe some early season woes. This is how seasons play out. Things happen over the course of 82. Sometimes the team that you write off by December puts it together by February. Sometimes they only put it together in March because that's when everyone else stopped trying. I think the Hawks had a little bit of both. I think they finally, kind of at the deadline, accepted their direction, and then once that started to take shape, they started to also conveniently play some teams that kind of stopped trying by the 8 minute mark of the third quarter. Like, I don't want to discredit them because everything they're doing is towards the future, like not right now. So we don't need to have these crazy standards or expectations of them. For Nikhil Alexander Walker to be an elite role player, I think he would have to be a role player. I think he might be bigger and better than that now, man. I think it's obviously circumstantial, but on this Atlanta team, he's more than a role player, unless, you kind of see it as like everyone besides Jalen Johnson is a role player on this Atlanta team, which sure, but I guess isn't Jalen Johnson a role player by that same like his role is to be the guy. It's not like he's would be the guy on every team in the league. So I think in general, yes, like if he is in a situation where he's a role player, yes, he's an elite role player. But I think the answer you might want to hear more is I think he's even better than that. So I think he deserves a, just to say, hey, Lakers really, really could have used him in a situation where they traded LeBron for some center depth or wing, like whatever it is. Like winning teams should want this guy even on his new contract, which is much larger than the old one. I think that's what elite role players are is they make 20 million a year or more and they're worth it despite not being a star.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with both of those points. I mean, it's a great one to think about the Hawks where they were headed into the season. Most people thought they'd be this top 5 or 6 seed at minimum. Some people were even higher on them. So yeah, this is kind of making up for that. And ultimately in the playoffs, I don't trust them enough to upset one of these teams. Unless I guess they fall to the Pistons. I think they could give them some headaches. But against the Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, maybe it could be a tough series, but I don't think they have much upside outside of maybe like an upset against the Pistons and then getting eliminated in the second round. Like you said, they've just beat up on a lot of bad teams. I still think they're a decent team, and overall, when you look at their cap space, potentially adding a top three pick, maybe even the number one overall pick, they're in an awesome position. But right now, I don't think they're much of a real threat in the East. With the Nikhil piece, I I don't know how to classify him exactly because I
Yeah,
do
right. It's
agree
like
where it- and here's where I'm gonna give a comparison. He reminds me, and he's not a perfect one for one comparison in terms of play style. I think he's like moved into this Derek White tier where it's like he's a complimentary star, I guess is the best word I could come up with. Where he's a guy, if he's playing a
yeah,
right? He's playing a specific role. He's an elite player in that role, but he can also scale up, and he's so much more than simply a role player. So I think he's moved up from being a truly elite role player in Minnesota and getting this like $16 million a year contract to a point where I view him more as like that scalable, complementary, malleable star in a way where he's not going to make an all-star team necessarily, but you're looking at the East this year, I remember, it's like, whoa, this guy's averaging 20 points. He does all these things well, whether it's shooting, playmaking, defense. He can give you a little bit of everything. Could he be like a sneaky all-star in the same way that Derek White's been talked about to the point where it's like, realistically, he's not one of the 12 best players in the conference, but in the right year, I think he has like just a sneaky all-star case. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at with Nikhil. The best word I can come up with is complimentary star.
yeah, I love that. I love that. I think Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are kind of both in that category. I just think I think it's hard. This is like a philosophical discussion. Marketability versus social benefit. Like, this is like deep, like political. Like, but I think there's something to the kind of the kind of identity crisis that we're having right now in basketball analysis with regard to how people typically view and describe talent or ability or impact versus its reality. I think data and all these numbers and analytics being publicly available has leveled the playing field like never before. But I also think so many people have no idea what they're looking at. I think people did before. Now there's more of them. Now there's more people that yada yada yada. This all comes to say that I wonder if just because 95% of NBA fans would say some player is better than Derek White or is better than OG Anunoby, like they're not right. We know that. But how do you change that in a fan base of sports? Like how I guess NBC and Prime are trying to set the tone right now and come out with this coverage that's on the ground level and guys on the bench and analytical and demonstrative and more like NFL coverage. I think that's part of the answer because now in NFL it took decades, but I think now on Twitter the average NFL fan is much more recognizant of an offensive lineman's value than they were 10, 20 years ago, right? That has yet to kind of happen in basketball. We still have not shifted the public discourse away from points per game good or bad, but many good, little bad, and that's it. Like I don't know. I don't know what the hell the answer is, but I think like guys like Derek White and Evan Mobley and OG Anunoby and so many other players provide more value on a nightly, on a weekly, on a monthly, on a yearly basis than players that are just like factually accepted as better than them. And I'm not sure how to address that, but I definitely agree with you that we're watching another one bloom in Naw. And it's interesting because Naw might have the most star adjacent skill set of guys like Josh Hart, of guys like Derek White, who contribute in all these other ways, rim protection at the guard spot and these things that D White does. It's like Naw with his on-ball handle, just being freaking Shea's cousin, like is out there in his shoes every game. It kind of helps too with the scoring, make it look a little spicier. I wonder I wonder if he is not both an elite role player and also like a bad star, like a compliment, a star in his role. He'd be bad as a star. He'd be bad as a traditional star, but being himself, he is a star, and you just don't get it is a hard sell to the average NBA fan. I need to figure out, as someone who covers the game, how to bridge that gap better.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you bring up a lot of good points there. The way I would just sort of look at it in sort of like simple terms is a guy like Derek White or Nikhil Alexander Walker or OG Anunoby. I don't think they can be the primary scoring option on any sort of a competent team in any way. However, I think they can be that second or third scoring option on an elite team, and I think that's where they really thrive. But on a given night or during a stretch, they are capable of putting up these big numbers, and they do have these skill sets where they can create for themselves. I mean, you look at Mikal Bridges, for instance, when he averaged like 26 points a game with the Nets or whatever it was. I feel like that's what it's really all about, where it's like they can scale up on the right team, but ultimately they're best served as this like third option on a truly elite team. So yeah, that's sort of the simplified version as I like to look at it. But yeah, it is interesting how the game is being viewed. I think a lot of people there's a big divide because a lot of people will look at these traditional counting stats and be like, "Oh, Domantas Sabonis, he's a top 15 player in the league or whatever." And then a lot of people will say, "Hey, he's not even a top 75 player," and they base so many things on analytics, and some people think that Derek White's the Celtics' best player based off some of these analytics. So it is sort of a fascinating divide, and at least me, I like to value a little bit of analytics, a little bit of the eye test, and just sort of a combination of everything. I feel like that's personally the best way to do it. I think everyone has their own way of valuing things and evaluating. I think, I mean, we really see that a lot in the draft as well, where it's like some people are more eye test based, some people are more analytics based. But yeah, whatever works for you. And I do think analytics has made so much of this fascinating.
It's just anyone who tells you that they're dumb is dumb. Anyone who tells you that they're everything is dumb. It's truly one of those charts where it's like the bell curve, and the two extremes are like the one Wojak meme face, and then the like the one in the middle is like the smart with but glasses that look like mine. And um, I think if you if you don't see it as necessary to include everything, that's fine. You just have to know what question you're trying to answer. Like, if I ask someone, objectively speaking, without any context, who is the NBA player that causes the biggest difference in field goal percentage when they're on the court versus off, like, yeah, okay, right? Like, where's the trophy that guy gets? Is that how the sport works, or does he need to be part of a successful team? Like, just because someone's good and their team's bad, or someone's bad but their team's good, it's not all this monolithic. Like, there's so much nuance, there's so many wrinkles, and I honestly think maybe my hot take is the rise and spread and proliferation of analytics has led to more people feeling like they can take shortcuts, in the sense of people took shortcuts before all the time, but you kind of just like knew who was lying and who, like, like your friend is like, oh, he always drops those passes. It's like, no, he doesn't. You just maybe you only have seen 3 games this season. You bias, whatever. Like, you write all these little things off in your head. But now analytics, it's like everyone has the same data. NBA teams track data in house, and there are like several teams that have members of their front office. I would guess every team has at least one member of their front office. But I know for a fact there are several teams with several key members of their front office that prefer the EPMs, the BPMs, the Darkos of the world to their million cajillion dollar in-house data. So the playing field is level. What people forget is you can give 100 people the same paint, the same brushes, and the same blank canvas. They are not all artists because of that. They will not all make the same quality art because of that. Someone who is not an artist can make something better than someone who is. It's all subjective, except in basketball, there's a winner. They keep score. There is a winner of the game. And I think sometimes people get a little lost and like, oh, well, the rim protection makes up for this and this, and he's actually providing so much value. It's like, hey, his team's trying to outscore the other team. He's good at defense, so that helps them stop the other team from scoring. That's good. Sometimes that's simple. Andre Roberson, good player, right? Like I think it's interesting now that everyone has the brushes, the oils, the canvas, but are you an artist? You know, that is, it's still up to how do you put it all together? And that's always been what it's about. Even though our tools are different, it's the same game. It's the same sport. It's the same conversations. It's the same everything. It's just all happening faster because instead of writing someone a letter and sending it on a steamboat for them to get 6 weeks later, that maybe you guys should paint a line 25 feet away from the basket and have shots behind it be worth more points. It's like you can get on the phone and be like, I just ran a simulation of our season if we sign this player. We should or should not do that. It's just a different era. The sport is the same and it's still awesome. And I think you and I could go on for maybe 8 more hours trying to figure out what pieces are what chess pieces and who can move which way and which set is best. And could someone with all bishops beat someone with all horses? Would that ever even, like, we could do this all day, but the magic of basketball is there are schedules, there are tip-off times, you're gonna get answers. I love that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great analogy about painting a canvas, and not everyone's an artist. And yeah, it is super interesting what different people value, and I don't think anyone is to tell you you're completely right or completely wrong for your process. And I think that's the beauty. Everyone has their own opinions, and everyone weighs stuff differently. Whether it's evaluating teams or players, I think that's just the fascinating part of just having basketball philosophies. And I mean, the role player thing is just a perfect example of it. And yeah, it's honestly incredible. And especially today with all these analytics, it breaks my brain at times, but I mean, this is why we love it. It's super interesting to talk about, and it's a ton of fun. Last question here from my guy, Bruce Velez. He wants to know who's your pick to win the NCAA tournament, and has that changed since last week?
Oh, my pick to win the tournament ahead of the tournament was just blindly Houston. Samson, it's like I can get down with what he's got going on there. Like that program. I have no affiliation, no connection, nothing. But I enjoy Samson's Cougars and I enjoy that program and what they're about. And as someone who just dips a toe into the college basketball universe, I just kind of pick them for fun like every year at this. It's like, yeah, Houston, why not? It's like, yeah, it's like they got a tough team. I feel like I've picked them like 3 years straight now, so maybe one of these years, right?
Yeah, I actually had Houston as well. That's funny. I didn't know that. Roll Cougars. Yeah, I'm sticking with it. It's kind of funny because they play tonight against Illinois, and I actually think
Illinois.
like Illinois is a good matchup. I think Houston's gonna win. I'm sticking with my prediction, never go back. But this is gonna come out on Friday, and who knows? People are gonna be like, "Wait, Houston, what?" But yeah, I'm sticking with Houston, and yeah, it's kind of same thing with you. I do watch a decent amount of college basketball, mostly for draft prospects, so I'm not like
Yeah.
super in tune with everything. But with that being said, 3 out of 4 years I have picked Houston, and I got a feeling this is gonna be the year. Yeah, they check all the boxes for me, so yeah, I'm sticking with Houston. But who knows? Michigan, Arizona, there's so many different good teams. But
Michigan is the one this year that feels like they have some juice. I feel like they're always thrown around for good reason. I feel like this year they're being thrown around with some actual like, hey, this could be a run. Like this could be a thing. That would be fun. That's always fun. That's a fun basketball state, man. I know Pistons fans, me being a Knicks reporter, think that I like want them all dead or something, but there's like this like perceived animosity that just doesn't exist. But like I love Detroit basketball and Michigan basketball. I think it's awesome. So go them. I'm half from Finland. I feel like that makes me like a Michigander in spirit a little bit, like it's hockey blood. Come on, I'm with you guys.
hell yeah, no, that would be. I mean, Houston, Michigan, that would be an awesome national championship game. I would love to see that. And the Michigan's just a wagon this year. I mean, that front court is insane. That genuinely might be the best front court I've ever seen at the college level. With that being said, I'm still sticking with Houston. Let's go Cougars. But yeah, unless you have any closing thoughts, I think we can wrap it up here.
I've shared too many thoughts on this show, my man.
All right. Yeah. Before we officially close out the show, though, I just want to give you a chance to plug your work. Tell our listeners where they can find you at.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is hell to spell, but guess what? You're in luck. You don't have to type a letter of it. If you go on Google and look up Daily Knicks Jose Alvarado interview, it'll be the first thing to come up, I promise. And I recently got to talk with the newest Knick point guard, the Brooklynite, the Boriquin Brooklynite, and we got to chop it up about everything. So we talked about his struggles early on in his Knicks tenure, what it was like going back home, having a great couple first games, and then kind of slumming it and really needing to dig in and learn his team and learn his system and making those adjustments. And he's definitely excited about these playoffs coming up. And we talked about some March Madness memories. It was a great talk. And I hope I conveyed that in the piece, because it was a really great conversation with Jose, and it was awesome of him to give me the time of day there. So shout out to Daily Knicks for the opportunity, and go check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'll throw all your links in the description. And for our listeners, make sure to go check him out. He does some great
Too
work.
kind.
Absolutely. But yeah, just going to wrap up the episode here. Appreciate you hopping on the show again, Kris. And yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next episode.